and Israel's fundamentally changed. I think Israel's talked itself into a one-state solution, and it ain't the one that Israel thinks it wants to have. Because I honestly believe what Israel's done is guarantee that in a decade there won't be an Israel. There'll be a Palestine. Jews will be welcome to live in there, but you'll find that when the Palestinian state is created, that many of these Zionists will flee because they don't want to live in peace with Palestinians. They are what I call the Brooklyn Jew class, and I don't mean that there's nothing anti-Semitic in that. Brooklyn Jews, that's it, class of people who feel free to fly into Israel and go to the West Bank and murder people and steal their homes and steal their land. And when confronted about it, they say, that's what we get to do. The courts back us up. The soldiers are there. These are Americans who go to Israel to murder Palestinians and steal their land. They aren't going to stay in Israel. They're going to try and come back to America. I'd like to believe that we pass laws that say you're not welcome back here. You're on your own. But it's over for Israel. I think Israel has talked itself out of existence. That's the real implication of this fight.
You know, if you went back to October 5th and you had done a survey of the Arab Muslim countries in the Middle East, you'd find that Hamas was not very popular in Egypt. Hamas was not popular, not much support in Saudi Arabia at all. Ditto for Jordan and for Turkey. What Israel has done in the last 3 months is they've turned Hamas into a sympathetic figure, or at least one that the Egyptians, the Saudis, the Jordanians, and the Turks have to pay attention to. If for no other reason, just to placate the guy in the street that's really upset by what they're seeing Israel do to the Palestinian civilians. So it has actually made Hamas stronger. That's the irony of this. It's made Hamas stronger, not weaker. And, you know, Israel's got this in their mind. They think that they can always kill their way out of something. And it's like they decided, I think it wasn't Netanyahu just announced that maybe they were going to do like Munich 2. You know, in the aftermath of the Munich Olympics, they sent out hit teams to kill all the perpetrators. Well, you know, number one, it was basically a failure as a mission because they killed a waiter up in Norway who wasn't even involved, had nothing to do with it. And they didn't get them all. And when the operation was over, it didn't stop the terrorist attacks. So, I mean, the goal of using force is ultimately to stop the attack. You know, I'm a firearms trainer and I teach people, you never draw your gun and point it at someone unless your life is in imminent danger. And then if you have to point your gun and fire, but make sure you stop the threat. Once the threat's over, gun back in the holster. Well, Israel's never learned that. This policy of killing civilians it's going to cost them. It's bad when a friend of mine, she's Jewish, she's a daughter of a Holocaust survivor. And I was at her house 2 nights ago. They had sort of a holiday party. And she comes up to me and whispers, she goes, I'm watching what's going on over there. And the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians what the Nazis did to my mother. You know it's bad when you got a Jewish lady who's a Holocaust survivor who's making that comparison.
Yeah. Well, if you could, and Scott, maybe I can have you come back in here, the ramifications of what Israel is doing has obviously spilled over well beyond the Gaza was called an enclave, but that part of Palestinian territory. And now there is increasing tensions around the Red Sea with Yemen's Ansar Allah getting really deep in waging a blockade that's been pretty successful to this point in response to what's happening in Gaza. But of course, there's more with Hezbollah, and there have been, I feel like there's been more and more tensions regionally. And Israel is talking about trying to get the U.S. to help them push Hezbollah back along the border. Help us make sense of the regional ramifications and where this is going as we enter 2024.
Well, first of all, let's reflect back on Nasrallah's speech that he gave, I think, on October 9th, 2 days after. And I call it the escalation management speech. And because everybody's expecting Hezbollah to jump in and join the fight. And Hezbollah basically said, we're in, but our way. We're going to do it our way. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it that way, because how is Israel going to be strategically defeated here? Israel set the parameters of victory being the destruction of Hamas. I think Larry and I agree. Hamas is won. They're not going to be destroyed. So Israel's already lost this war. Plus, if you're Hezbollah, your goal is the creation of a Palestinian state. So you got to keep the whole world's focus on that problem set, and it's working against Israel. The whole world is rallied behind it. The last thing you want to do is expand this conflict, because now suddenly the Palestinian issue is not the only issue. In fact, it's going to be put on the back burner as you deal with bigger regional issues like war with Iran. That's a bigger problem set than the Palestinian issue. So you don't want to expand this conflict. So you've seen a lot of escalation management, but it's been done very cleverly. Hezbollah, for not wanting to get involved, has tied down one half of the Israeli Navy, 1/3 of the Israeli Air Force, 1/4 of the Israeli Army. They forced 70,000 people to be displaced out of northern Israel, putting a huge burden on the Israeli economy. And they're just humiliating the Israelis on a daily basis on the border. And here's the thing. You think Hamas has tunnels. Hezbollah has tunnels, better tunnels, deeper tunnels, longer tunnels. You know that tunnel that the Israelis dug up? It's amazing. Right at I think it's the Eretz crossing. And suddenly 400 meters from the crossing, how far along are we? 70 some odd days in this conflict. And they go, oh my God, the biggest tunnel imaginable that you can literally drive a car through is right here. Wait a minute. You guys didn't find that tunnel until now? That tunnel is small compared to the tunnels that Hezbollah has carved into northern Israel. When the time comes, Hezbollah will seize northern Israel. There's nothing the Israelis can do to stop it. They will take Kiryat Shimona. They will take other towns. They will take the Galilee. Israel can't stop them. But Hezbollah doesn't want to do that right now. Hezbollah has let it be known that they can do that, and they will do that if called upon. And this is why you're seeing Israel hesitate, because you've got all the chest thumping guys saying we need to go in and kick Hezbollah's butt. Israel proved that they can't kick Hezbollah's butt. They tried it in 2006. Didn't work. Hezbollah has gotten even better. They've become combat hardened with a decade plus experience in Syria. So there's nothing the United States can do. What, you think American pilots and American airplanes dropping American bombs are going to do a better job than Israeli pilots and American airplanes dropping American bombs? No. First of all, our pilots aren't that good anymore. We just don't train that well. Training is expensive. When was the last time we did a real honest to God, air attack against somebody with an integrated air defense, or somebody has the potential of doing that?
Yeah.
Not in a long time. Our pilots don't know how to fight. And so we'd be going through a learning curve that'd be unreal. And then we'd get humiliated because it's not stopping anything. And you think Americans, when Hezbollah moves into northern Israel, you think Americans are going to drop bombs on Kiryat Shimona? You think Americans are going to drop bombs on Israel? Ain't going to happen. See, Hezbollah isn't going to sit in southern Lebanon and let the fight come to them. Hezbollah is going to take the fight to northern Israel. And now the Israelis are going to have to bomb their own cities, bomb their own people. America will stay out of that fight because we are not going to bomb Israel. Hezbollah's thinking. They know this. If I know this, Israel knows this. America knows this. That's why I'm not too worried about an expansion of the fight, because Israel knows they'll just get, I was going to use a bad word, they'll get beat up. Now we come to the Houthi. This is very rude of me, but every time when I think of the Houthi, I just think of, some wild dudes from Mad Max, just yelling charge and go. Because they just sort of, on October 19th, they just appeared. The Houthi just woke up and said, screw it, launch. And everybody's like, what the heck just happened? The Houthi just fired on Israel. Did that really happen? Houthi, hell yeah, that happened. We're going to do it again. Launch, launch, launch. And then they say, screw it, take a ship. fly helicopters out there, take everybody go, what the hell's going on? What are the Houthi doing? And then the Houthi just say, we're going to shut it all down. And they have. They've effectively closed I can't say the word, the Man el Bab Straits, that little narrow piece of water between Yemen and Djibouti. They've shut it down. The Red Sea, you can't go to the Suez Canal right now because the Houthi have shut it down. And now America's going, what do we do? So we're moving a fleet down and we're realizing we can't do anything. Now, the big news isn't that America can't beat the Houthi. I mean, we can't. And we're not going to. To secure those straits, we'd have to put 40,000 Marines on the ground. We don't have 40,000 Marines to put on the ground. We can't get 40,000 Marines there. And once we get them on the ground, we can't sustain it. There's 100,000 plus Houthi out there. We ain't going to beat them. Saudi Arabia's been trying since 2014 using American planes with American bombs, using American intelligence. Hasn't worked. The Houthi can destroy Saudi Arabia's oil production capacity. That's one big thing here that's causing everybody to hit pause on that. Saudi Arabia is like, you guys are going to do what to the Houthi? Pause, please pause, because they're going to blow up the Aramco oil fields, and we don't want that to happen. The United Arab Emirates going, wait a minute, you're going to do what? No, we don't want to have anything with that either. Pause, because they don't want to lose their oil production capacity either. So America's sitting there going, But here's the big story. It's not about that strait. You know how America has been saying for decades, we guarantee that the Strait of Hormuz will be open? That Iran will never shut it down. That if Iran ever tries to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, the American Fifth Fleet will keep it open. That's just been proven to be a lie.
Yeah.
Because we can't beat the Houthi, and we damn sure aren't going to beat the Iranians. What this proves is that America's fleet, all of its, dozen, aircraft carrier battle groups, can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's a waste of money, total waste of money. We have to be careful about getting sunk, losing a carrier. As Larry said, I'm an American taxpayer. Okay, so I got the USS Carney out there, the Aegis class, Arleigh Burke class destroyer. It's got 90 missiles, SM-2s, SM-6s, other things out there. And each one of them runs between $1.1 and $4 million each, depending on which missile you use. The Houthi have thousands of these drones and cheap missiles. They cost them $2,000, $5,000, maybe $10,000 for the good stuff. And the Houthi are just sitting there again. The guy from Mad Max, and they're going to launch these things. And the Carney's going to go detected, launch, shot, detected, launch, shot, detected, and now they're done. They fired off 90. And as Larry said, they don't have the tenders anymore. You can't bring up the ship that goes resupply in. They got to pull the Carney out. And then who's going to replace the Carney? Some other funky named ship that's going to fire off 90 missiles and have to go, and another one and go. There's only so many, missile destroyers in a carrier battle group. And when they deplete this stuff, the carrier's got to go because it can't stay there. Something's going to hit the carrier. And now here's the other thing. What have the Ukrainians been using that's driving the Russians crazy in the Black Sea? The underwater drones. The underwater drones. Well, Russia captured some of them. And I don't know if you saw it, Larry, but Russia just published photographs saying, we've just produced our own underwater drone. And Russia has really good relationships with the Iranians. So I guarantee you that if Russia produced an underwater drone, the Iranians are producing an underwater drone. And if the Iranians produced it, the Houthi have it. And so we're going to be sitting there going, shoot down missile, shoot down missile, shoot down missile. Holy shit, bad word again. Gotta watch out. Got 20 underwater drones coming at me. It's over, ladies and gentlemen. We lost a carrier. 5,000 Americans are dead. This is the reality of the carrier battle group. It's a legacy system going back to World War II that has no application in modern warfare whatsoever. America has been exposed as literally the empty shell that we are. It's not so much about the Red Sea. The Strait of Hormuz has just been guaranteed. We just lost the Strait of Hormuz because the whole idea of the Strait of Hormuz was the perception that America could do something. Well, that's been exposed as a lie. So the Iranians are empowered. The Saudis and the UAE is going, I think it's time we have to rethink our strategic relationships here because America can't defend anything. The whole aspect of what America was doing with power projection was the potential of action that creates deterrence. We don't have the potential of action. Where can we go, Larry? Where can we go? We can't go into Europe. We've proven that.
Yeah,
We can't defend the Red Sea against the Houthi. We think we want to hook and jab with the Chinese in the Pacific. Are we high? America's been exposed to this nation that spends $1 trillion a year on a military that can't do anything.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, again, I had not really focused on the capability of the destroyers, their limited capability. It had never entered my mind to explore the concept of a expeditionary navy vice a forward-based navy. I made some assumptions that were completely wrong. And once you wake up to it, and again, I hadn't even thought about the Strait of Hormuz until you pointed it out. You're absolutely right. The tactic is real simple. All any country has to do is assemble 300,000 drones capable of launching some sort of explosive device that can create damage on a maritime vessel, and then launch them in swarms. You're going to overwhelm the defense systems that the U.S. Navy has, and again, none of this is classified. It's all it's wide open, and then you can start sinking ships. Now, the Chinese, everything the United States is doing out there off the coast of China is just ridiculous. The United States is trying to pick a fight that we can't even win. We can't even finish it. So, one of the articles I linked to into my piece was called "Rebalance the Fleet Toward Being a Truly Expeditionary Navy." That was eye-opening. And that was just published in September of 2023. So what we've got is the phrase I've used before. The United States has the most expensive military in the world. We've got one of the most expensive, least capable navies in the world. That's the shocker. And, Scott, what do you think? Why do you think they're delaying? Yeah, I mean, at this point, Yemen has done everything that in normal times when we thought we had an expeditionary navy, we would have already launched. And we're not launching. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, because again, it's if you went in the ring with Mike Tyson, all right, you're expecting
I'd be out of breath from running.
Yeah, when he hits you, you're expecting to die. So imagine you're going in the ring with Mike Tyson. And oh God, and he just lines up and he hits you, and it's nothing. You're like, what the hell? Hits you again, nothing.
Yeah,
you hit him, he's hurting. You're like, I got this. See, America's Mike Tyson, but without the punch.
Yeah,
we've all hyped up. I likened it earlier. When I played football in college, all the linemen, I was a tight end, but I was originally a wide receiver, so I was a very small tight end. All the linemen, go in there and they bench press, and they all got the 300-pound club, the 350-pound club, the 400-pound club in terms of their bench press. I never got above 2 1/4, so I didn't earn any of the big T-shirts. But they're all out there. But it's like a guy that in college, is pumping up. He's got the 400-pound club, and now he comes back to the 10-year reunion. And he's got the 400-pound club T-shirt on there, and he's bringing people into the gym, and he's like, everybody's expecting him to lift 400 pounds, and he gets up to 250, and then he stops, and he starts talking and drinking water. You're like, well, where's 400? Can't do it anymore. That's America. Yeah. Everybody's expecting the 400-pound club, and you got a guy that can't bench 2 1/4 anymore. That's America. We don't want to act, because the second we act, we're exposed as a fraud. And all that deterrence goes away. Again, coming back to what Tony Blinken said, we have to deal with China from a position of strength. He just said that. But a position of strength means that we have to have the perception of capability. If we expose the fraud that we are with the Houthi, because Larry, again, mobile relocatable targets. That's a fancy way of saying mobile missiles. I did that during the Gulf War. That was my thing. Hunting scuds. We didn't kill a single one. Couldn't, didn't know how to do it. And we haven't gotten any better. And so we're going to engage now in a very expensive air campaign against the Houthi, and we're not going to kill anything. They're going to keep launching, and it just exposes us as a fraud. And the whole idea of, this potential is to intimidate the Iranians into saying, don't begin with us because you think you have mobile missiles, but we have the American Navy that's very good at hunting. Oh, wait a minute. We just couldn't even deal with the Houthi. So I don't think we want to pull this trigger, because the moment we pull the trigger, any pretense of American capability is gone. Yeah. The other thing is, this coalition we've assembled ain't much of a coalition. It will fall apart instantaneously. And then the most important thing is, what happens when the Houthi take out the Saudi oil fields? Yeah. We don't have an answer to that. So I think, we've done a lot of bluffing. The smart thing for the United States at this point in time would be literally, look, we made a decision. We're going to let the Israelis kill as many Palestinians as possible. So the smart thing to do is just tell Israel, suck it up for a couple weeks, kill as many Palestinians as you want to, and then come January, you got to let the humanitarian goods, because all the Houthis say is, we'll stop the moment you let humanitarian goods come into Gaza. Mm-hmm. Stop the killing, let the humanitarian goods in, and we will open this baby up. But what we're going to do now is empower the Houthi to come up with different terms, because now the Houthi look around saying, wait a minute, we could ask for more. It's like doing one of those business negotiations, and you find out that, you low bid and you could have gone for more. The Houthi are finding out that they have more leverage than they possibly, and they're still backed by the Iranians now, who are going to be empowered. This is a game. I use that term all the time. It gets me in trouble, but it's a game-changing thing that's going on right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, and look, the other day, the Houthis, they shot down a Reaper drone, a $30 million ISR platform. And I'd love to know what they shot it down with, how much money they actually invested to shoot down a $30 million drone, but I'll be willing to bet it was less than $500,000, which that's a pretty good return on investment. Yeah. And, I think that has to also be weighing on the military planners' minds that as Scott noted, one, we don't have the staying power. Two, when we have to pull out, it's going to make us look weak. Three, we're not even sure we can put ISR safely up in the area to find out where they're located, so we know what we're shooting. So it's not an easy task, and these damn Houthis, boy, they just won't cooperate. They won't put together fixed military bases that we can easily target. How dare they? Don't they know about that international based rules order? They're ignoring the memo.
All right. With Operation Prosperity Guardian, as the United States is calling it, Scott and Larry, I think you're alluding to and directly stating this point altogether, that the U.S. military is pretty hollowed out. It's the bark, no bite. But at the same time, this is quite the bark. This is a coalition of the willing. Last time that happened in this particular conflict, it was a Saudi-led U.S. from the rear coalition that did wage a pretty disastrous and very just genocidal hell on Yemen. That's not happening right now. And you're saying that it's probably not, there's probably not going to be a major strike. So why then even form this coalition, and what will happen? Because can it just sit and play at war like they do in the South China Sea, for example? Is that what's going to happen? I mean, it does baffle my mind a bit that all of this trouble is being spent on something that has absolutely no bite.
Well, look at what they sent. Canada's contribution, 3 staff officers. Britain, they've sent a ship that hasn't been able to get out of dry dock. And they're really worried that it's going to break down while it's out there in the Red Sea, and they're going to be spinning around in a circle, not able to do anything. This thing's a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah. Again, that we just come down to, I'm going to huff and I'm going to puff and I'm going to blow your house down. But we can't blow anything down, and we're huffing and puffing. And if if you're going to say you have a capability, you should be prepared to do it. You should be prepared to follow through. The United States, I think, look, politics is a funny thing too. And Biden, somebody may make the decision to initiate a bombing campaign just because we have to do something, but it will be disaster because we can't sustain. It's very expensive to bomb. I just want people to understand that, sorting out the number of aircraft that we're going to have to sort out with sustained sorties, the fuel, the wear and tear on the aircraft, the bombs, keeping that air carrier in play, shooting down all the Houthi drones are going to be coming at them. We're going to bankrupt ourselves, and we can't keep that force in play. Hopefully, we don't lose anything. But the real thing is that we're going to find out. The Houthi will find out that we can't beat them. And then the world realizes they can't beat them. This is why I think they probably won't do it. But politics is strange. We are entering the really silly season of American politics right now. And Joe Biden's sort of in a desperate, he lost Afghanistan. He's lost Ukraine. He's losing Israel. Now you got the Houthi, which means you're going to lose Iran, which means, and China's watching this too. Basically, what we're doing in Israel is, and what we've done with Ukraine is, in a very short period of time, we've gone from the world's preeminent superpower to the laughing joke. That doesn't mean we can't kill people. Of course we can kill people. We can kill a lot of people, but we can't win. And that's the thing. We can't close the deal anymore. Yeah.
Can you imagine being a Chinese intelligence analyst in February of 2022? And you were asked to assess the ability of the United States to produce and supply 155 millimeter artillery shells. I suspect that Chinese analyst, or the Russian analyst for that matter, would have projected a far greater capability with respect to what the United States could do. And that would have created some caution. And now, once they've seen with their own eyes that the United States can't do it, we can produce maybe in 1 year what Ukraine would fire in 1 month. And so all of a sudden, these countries, Scott, it was a great analogy that we had built ourselves up like the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. And it turns out we're just a short little fat guy behind a curtain that a lot of the stuff we claim we can do, we can't do. And then the real sort of audacity is we've got U.S. military planners instructing the Ukrainians on how to fight a peer-to-peer war. Now, that's like going to some guy to learn how to shoot a rifle, and the guy's never shot a rifle. So you don't want to take rifle shooting instruction from somebody that's never shot a rifle. And, the reality is there's nobody in the world that's fought a peer-to-peer battle except for Russia now. And they've got ample experience doing it. And because when you read back one of the postmortems that the Washington Post did on why the counteroffensive failed, I was stunned that when they did the exercises beforehand, they did war gaming, tabletops. They left out the assumption about, well, you don't need fixed wing aircraft to provide close air support. And you don't need that rotary wing aircraft either that can also provide close air support as well as evacuate wounded for the battlefield. We'll just take those out of there. Hello? I mean, that's like saying, yeah, I'm going to go drive the car on the freeway, only I'm going to put on a blindfold, see how I do. You're going to crash. So, I mean, it's just, this is what the failure of the U.S. military across the board, it's not just one thing. It's a layered problem.
Yeah. No, it is. See, we got a visitor. No, it is. And maybe to close, I've kept you almost for 2 hours now. So maybe to close, any final thoughts we can begin with, Scott, on prospects geopolitically, 2024. Where are things headed? Where is the U.S., I guess we call U.S. NATO axis? Where is it headed? And where is the rest of the world headed? What can we expect? Huge question, but just want to kick it to you, Scott, to close, and then Larry, final word.
Well, I think you're going to see that the United States is, Larry talked about the rapid, can't remember, the devolution or devolution or of Ukraine. I think we're going to see the rapid devolution of the United States, because again, how quick, Larry brought up a wonderful analogy, the Wizard of Oz. I just watched it again because, it's that time of the year. But at the beginning, the wizard is everything. The wizard, you're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. And when they first see him, oh, I'm the great and powerful wizard. And then suddenly the devolution of the wizard, all you had to do is have Toto come in and pull the curtain back, and you realize that all of that was fake. None of it was real. Toto's done pull the curtain back. The world's seen how fake America is. I don't think we have gotten this far because we've been bad for a long time. We've been rotting from the inside, but we've gotten this far based upon reputation, and arrogance, and people have been buying into the bluff. The bluff's been called by the Houthi. The bluff's been called by everybody, Russia. So I think the world is going to go through a very rapid transition. Russia's in charge of BRICS this year. This ain't going to be passive. I mean, China had BRICS, and they were very good, but there was only a limit. At that time, you still believed in America's potential. I think America is going to not collapse, but we are going to be de-emphasized on the world stage. The world's tired of us. Israel broke our moral authority. Ukraine broke our military potential. We're going to have to redefine ourselves, and this may take decades. But in the meantime, Russia has redefined itself. China, we haven't talked about China. China is sitting there like this huge economic engine that we don't appreciate. Just like we don't appreciate the size of Russia and the potential of Russia, China's big, man. China's got a lot of capabilities. I think 2024 is going to be the year of that America devolves. Politically, I think the 2024 election is going to be an absolute disaster for American democracy, but also geopolitically, I think the world's going to realize that America just doesn't matter anymore. And I mean, the whole world's going to realize this quickly. What happens when the South Koreans and the Japanese realize that America is nothing? Suddenly all this arrogance towards North Korea is going to have to be ratcheted down. So that's what I see for 2024. I see this being the year of America's redefinition on a global stage, and it's not going to be redefined in a better way. This is going to be a very bad year for America.
Yeah, I wish to offer us a more hopeful vision, but I can't. The United States has been in this self-delusion mode for it's really accelerated over the last 3 years. To hear these generals, Petraeus, Hodges, and others that have gone on air repeatedly say, "Oh yeah, Ukraine's going to punch through the Russian lines like a hot knife through butter. They're going to be at the Crimea by August. There's no way. Russia has no good army. It's having to drag its conscripts into it forcibly. They don't have good leadership. They're running out of missiles. They're running out of rockets. They're lagging by. I mean, it's one lie after another lie after another lie. And this isn't being done to deliberately spread misinformation. They believe this stuff. They really, truly believe this stuff. And it goes back to the failure to come to grips with reality. And so the reality that's facing America now is, instead of having two political parties that are pretty stable, we're going to be in the midst of a genuine chaos. You've got Robert F. Kennedy, who's going to be running as an independent. Donald Trump will probably be the Republican nominee, but there's a significant number of establishment Republican types that are going to oppose him.
Invaded Cyprus, and the United States began sanctioning Turkey before that invasion. So we have sort of this love-hate relationship with Turkey, where they're a member of NATO, they buy American equipment, but we deny them full access to American equipment. We blocked Turkey from the F-35 program, even though they had invested a lot of money into that, and they were prepared to produce part of the F-35 aircraft in Turkish aircraft factories. We've not been forthright in replacing the F-35 with an advanced F-16. We put a lot of strings on that. Turkey's bought the S-400 surface-to-air missile from Russia, which is one of Russia's most advanced air defense systems. And there's a lot of concern that, if Turkey has the F-35 and the S-400, that the S-400 radar will be able to learn a lot of things about F-35 operations, and that will expose the United States to vulnerability. So there's a lot of people hesitant about allowing Turkey to have both the F-35 and the S-400. So we're trying to we put pressure on Turkey. We sanction Turkey, and as a result, Turkey has open relations. I went to the Defender of the Fatherland event at the Russian Embassy in Washington, D.C. last February. That's one where I famously or infamously posted me doing a vodka toast with two Russian colonels. But at that event was the Turkish air attaché. And I sat there and had a very long discussion with him about the S-400, about the F-35, about Turkish relations with Russia. The Turkish officer and the Russian officer were on friendly terms. They, one's a NATO officer, the other one's a Russian, but they were doing what defense attachés are supposed to be doing. That is working together, trying to get a better understanding. There it is. I love this video. There are many people out there who hate this video, but I don't care. This is called building bridges, making friends. But I think I've touched on the subject long enough to
I think Hussein should be happy by now, maybe even elated.
He should be. I did my best, Hussein. I'm a little tired and I'm starting to babble, so I'm going to cut it off.
No, you're doing great. Should we take a phone call from Blind Jim?
Sure.
All right.
So I'm going to cut it off.
Blind Jim, turn down your computer.
Hello?
All right. Are you ready to are you ready to be breviloquent, Blind Jim?
Yes, I am.
All right, go ahead.
Anyhow, Scott, could you tell us what the Russians, how they perceive Hamas and the current Israeli government?
Sure. I just had a conversation with a Russian official today, and Russia, of course, condemns Hamas' attack on October 7th, their attack on Israel. Russia views Hamas as a terrorist organization. Their actions on that date is terrorism, but Russia doesn't believe that gives Israel carte blanche to do anything they want in retaliation. And the Russian feeling now is that Israel is actually the bigger terrorist threat, that Israel's actions far exceed what Hamas did on October 7th. And so Russia not only condemns Israel, but it labels Israel as a terroristic state, and is pushing for a two-state solution, the fulfillment of the Palestinian people's desire to have their own homeland. So that, I think, captures the Russian position in a nutshell.
That was breviloquent, both on your part and Blind Jim's.
Breviloquent.
Paul Spencer, who's near Portland, Oregon. Near Portland. Chechnya is building 100+ homes for Gazan refugees. There are over 1,000 of these folks there now. Could or should the Russian Federation invite Gazans to build a new country of sorts in some southern part of the RF, near Kazakhstan, for instance?
Before Russia does that, I think people should ask the Palestinians if that's what they want. This is sort of modeled on, the early Zionist activities of the Jews who were looking at homelands. I think they were looking in Africa and Uganda for a homeland. And the idea was just anywhere you could get a homeland, you could get a homeland. But, they chose the Holy Land because there's biblical links there. The Palestinians, why would they want to live anywhere but Palestine? I mean, that's their homeland. It's theirs. I don't think the Palestinians would agree to a false state, a fake state, a new state that doesn't have any historical relevance.
All right, our first internet outage. And we'll see if we can get Scott back. As I said before, we do have a plan. If
so, but I'm back.
Okay.
I don't think that I don't think the Palestinians would go for it. I commend Chechnya for its for what it's doing for Palestinian refugees, but I think the status will be refugee status, which means at some point in time these people will hopefully be returned to their homeland and able to build homes in Palestine.
All right, keep that phone number handy just in case, Scott. Jasmine from the great state of Michigan. I think that's where Blind Jim is also, right? You have previously said that the U.S. will always remain faithful to Israel because of the Israeli lobby. But ever since the genocide in Gaza started, you can see the opinions change, especially among the young generation. So do you think the days of the Israeli lobby and Zionism are numbered?
I'd like to hope so. I'd like to believe so. And I would like, I want it to be that way. But the reality is, Israeli money runs deep. The corruption of the American political system at the hands of the Zionists, of the Israelis, is real. They brag about it, openly brag about it. They're going to spend $100 million to influence the 2024 election. Imagine if Russia just came out and said, "Hey, we're going to spend $100 million to influence the American election." Think anybody would stand for that? Of course not. But Israel's bragging about it. They openly lobby Congress. They threaten congressional members with being primaried. Imagine again if Russia came in and said, "Hey, if you don't support this, that, and the other thing, we're going to put money in the system and run somebody against you." Nobody would think that candidate would be legitimate. We'd say that's a Russian candidate. Well, guess what? Most of the candidates that run for Congress are Israeli candidates because they're bought and paid for by the state of Israel. And as long as that's the case, until you purge Congress of this Israeli taint, so to speak, I think that the lobby is always going to have that power and the influence. I'd like to believe that we could find a way to limit it, but I'm not optimistic.
What do you make of South Africa going before the UN court accusing Israel of genocide?
I think it's wonderful. I'm glad South Africa had the moral courage and integrity to do so. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that Israel is a genocidal state. What they're doing against the Palestinians readily qualifies as genocide, and it's wonderful that South Africa has taken this case to the court. The court is hearing the case. 84 pages of unequivocal truth, fact-based truth. In many cases, using the Israeli government's own words against them. You don't have to manufacture a case here. You don't have to use circumstantial evidence. The Israelis have right out, just Israeli officials have said it. There's the soldiers say it. The commanders say it. It's genocide, and I'd like to believe that the court will find Israel culpable in committing genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza.
All right, let's go on to our next question. This is from A Witness in Canada. Did Bernie Sanders just grow a spine by putting forth a resolution to find out if U.S. weapons were misused or not? Or is it a frantic move to distance the U.S. from the coming genocide conviction of Israel for their massacre in Gaza? Bernie Sanders growing a spine? Do you know about this?
No, I mean, I'm hearing about it, but I'll take a witness at face value here that this that Sanders did this. I don't think he did it because he's trying to do the right thing. He has long been an ardent supporter of Israel. I think he's doing it for political cover. At some point in time, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party is going to have to distance itself from the atrocities being committed by Israel. And what Bernie Sanders has done, even though he's technically an independent, he caucuses with the Democrats. And I think that what he's done here is create the beginnings of a political cover of as you call it, Jeff, a plan B for the United States when it's time to cut and run from Ukraine, because it's a sinking ship and we don't want to go down with that sinking ship.
All right, let's take another phone call.
Because it's a sinking ship.
Turn down your computer. What's your question?
Okay, well,
Turn it down.
Привет.
You can do
Hello.
it. You can do it. All right, what's your question?
Привет. Привет. Добрый день. Как дела? Scott Ritter for
Hello.
president.
Scott Ritter for president. Okay, is that it? Is
I
that
want
your
to toss that. I think it's a realistic goal to get Scott Ritter elected president in 2028. I just want to toss that out.
Okay.
But Mr. Ritter, you have inspired me to study and learn Russian, and to begin to read Pushkin and the other great Russian authors. I'm 64 years old, but I'm going to be doing that for the rest of my life. I'd just like to ask you, have you read all of Pushkin? What do you think are his important poems? I gather that Eugene Onegin, is that like the central work where where you get the ideas about the Russian soul? And just any other comments you'd have about Pushkin?
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks
that's
for
my
your
question.
call. Thanks for your call. You can listen to President Ritter address that question on your computer. Thank you. Go ahead, President.
Well, I want to commend you for learning the Russian language and familiarizing yourself with the great Russian authors, and of course, Alexander Pushkin is one of the greatest. Eugene Onegin, of course, as you said. I mean, you know the answer. It is a poem that many people say best describes the Russian soul. I'm lately been reading up on the Bronze Horseman, another epic poem written by Pushkin about the statue to Peter the Great in St. Petersburg. Because if you look at the prologue, it talks about it sort of mocks the Finns and the Swedes. And Peter the Great is building this city, St. Petersburg, in order to protect Russia from these two threats. And when you look at today, with Finland having joined NATO, Sweden on the cusp of entering NATO, it just seems to be relevant, and to get Pushkin's insight into the thinking behind the building of the city is, again, I just think there's a lot of important parallels today. But no, you're doing very good. I applaud
Do you think
you.
this guy could possibly be the U.S. ambassador to Russia in the Ritter administration?
Well, he could be the U.S. ambassador to Russia in somebody else's administration. I can tell you that the not only the likelihood of me running, but the chances of me being elected are slim to none. So I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I think I do a better job as a citizen ambassador than I would do as a failed presidential candidate.
All right. Well, a 64-year-old guy can dream, can he? For crying out loud. Give him something to live for. Kiki, who claims to be your biggest fan, I don't know about that. How do we measure that? She's, you know what? I think I forgot to change near Portland, Oregon. So disregard that. But anyway, you have said before that Israel is not our ally. Then why does the U.S. staunchly continue to support them, even during times of genocide. There's that G word again. I've been told they give us a foothold in the Middle East. Is this true? If not, then what do they do for us?
They bought us. They own us. I mean, you can listen to Alan Dershowitz. He gave a speech the other day where he, talks about the Jewish influence in America, and he doesn't, hide from it. He basically says that, the Jewish people who constitute, a small percentage of the American population dominate, and that they don't need to apologize about it. He brags about how the American Jews are harder working, smarter. They've applied themselves better, and they deserve the right to have this influence. And they not only deserve the right, but they have to have this right in order to, basically get America on board to, the Israeli bandwagon, so to speak. So, but when I say that Israel's not our ally, Israel uses the United States. We're a tool for Israel. So, we're being fooled or lulled into a false sense of complacency into believing that we have somehow a foothold in the Middle East and Israel. Israel doesn't want to give us a foothold in the Middle East. Israel just wants our money. Israel wants the political backing, the veto in the Security Council, etc. But Israel, doesn't want to open up its defense, its national defense, to the vulnerabilities that come with a genuine alliance with America. Plus, Israel spied on us. Who do you think Jonathan Pollard is? Do the research. Man who spied on the United States in the 1980s, took what we called the crown jewels of the intelligence business. The book that lists all of the frequencies that we monitor using our signal intelligence capabilities. And if you know that we're listening to you, if you know that we've broken a code, then you'll change the systems, and the money that we spent in, getting into the position where we could listen to that particular communication is wasted money. Jonathan Pollard sold this to the Israelis, and then the Israelis in turn bartered it to the Soviet Union to get more Jews out of Israel. So Israel uses America. They killed American sailors. They attacked the USS Liberty, a flagrant attack, killed American sailors, wounded American sailors, never really apologized for it. Israel continues to spy on us. We saw the AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, back in the late 1990s, was a front for spies. They were liaisoning with the Pentagon officials, and some of the Pentagon officials were giving AIPAC classified information about Iran's nuclear missile program, and then the AIPAC people gave that information to Israel. It's spying, literally spying. So no, Israel's not our ally. I think that there's a lot of propaganda that goes into defining Israel's relation with the United States. Both Israel and the American Jews like to make it out as Israel's our greatest ally, that it's literally the 51st state. But the reality is Israel is one of the worst enemies America's ever had, because they've done more harm to America than many of our acknowledged enemies.
All right, let's take a voicemail message, or play a voicemail message from an anonymous caller.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for answering our questions while traveling through Russia. Now, to my question, I can understand the importance of Mykolaiv to secure Odessa once taken by the Russian army, so that Ukraine does not pose danger to the Russian Navy around Crimea. But can you explain the strategic importance of the further northeast oblasts, Dnipropetrovsk and Kharkiv? Also, does the Ben Gurion project play a role in the recent Israeli incursion into Gaza? Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the question. I'll start with the Ben Gurion project. Basically, the Ben Gurion project is the idea that Israel is going to not be held hostage to the Suez Canal, and so they would build their own canal connecting the port of Eilat with the Mediterranean Sea. the plan envisioned extensive use of atomic demolition munitions to basically carve this canal out of the desert. It's a plan that has no chance of succeeding because no one's going to allow that many nuclear weapons to be detonated underground or to create these things. So I don't think the Ben Gurion project had anything to do with it because it's not an active, viable project, at least to the best of my knowledge. So that, the thing is, when you speak of Odessa, and I continue to believe that Odessa will be taken by the Russians as part of their demands when this conflict ends with Ukraine. Vladimir Putin recently has come out and said that Odessa is a Russian city, and he's a man who's very careful with his words. So I'll take him at face value that Russia plans on taking it. And as the gentleman caller mentioned, to take Odessa, you have to go through Mykolaiv, and so they're going to have to take Mykolaiv as well. But now, when you look at those two goals and objectives,
new co-host Yelena. So thanks for all your hard work. We appreciate it. Stay in touch.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
All right.
But I'm fired.
All right. Well, Scott, you missed the coin giveaway. We put the time to good use so that people would have something interesting. Well, it was kind of an odd name that I can't really remember. You know how people always have these weird handles on YouTube and so forth? Or maybe it wasn't even a weird one. Maybe it was just a foreign name, but I don't know. Bacham, something or other? Whatever.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations. All right. So let's see. You want to do a couple more questions? Where are we here now? We're still within the hour window. Okay. Let's see where we left off. Claudia Pineda in Ottawa, Canada. According to an article in the Times of Israel, Israel knows the exact location of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. However, according to the article, Sinwar has surrounded himself with a large number of Israeli hostages, which is preventing the IDF from carrying out a strike on him. Do you believe these statements?
No, I don't believe these statements. I think if they knew where he was, they'd kill him. And, the Israelis showed a callous indifference to the fate of Israeli citizens, both those who were taken prisoner by Hamas on October 7th and those who were simply caught in the crossfire. It's becoming apparent that Israel killed the vast majority of the Israelis who died on October 7th. That the Hannibal Directive, which is the name of a controversial directive that has Israel killing soldiers or hostages before they could be taken back into Gaza to prevent Hamas from using them as leverage to get Palestinian prisoners released, that the Hannibal Directive was in full force. So, no, I don't believe this. So I think if they knew where he was, they'd kill him.
All right, Scott, we'll take you any way we can get you with technical problems. But if you are able to steady your phone, we're hearing the rustling around a little bit. Are you able to steady it or not? Should we just continue?
Well, I'm holding it by hand because
okay.
I think the problems was that my little stick gig cut off my internet connection by putting pressure on my phone in some way that it shouldn't have. So rather than repeat it,
then we'll just live with it. We'll just live with it then. Okay. Just asking. All right. Ramsey from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Is the West experiencing a weapons shortage that could affect Israel's military capability? The U.S. bypassed Congress again to approve another arms sale to Israel consisting mainly of 155 millimeter shells. However, it seems those shells will be given to Israel unassembled. Is this how shells are normally exchanged?
I'm not somebody who has been involved in the transfer of weapons from the United States to other nations. I will say this, that when I inspected in Iraq, the weapons depots of the Iraqis, they had a tremendous amount of American-made ammunition, much of it which was sourced from Jordan, um, uh, because Iraq had some American-made, artillery systems, and the Jordanians were providing them with ammunition, and the ammunition, 155 millimeter ammunition, was stored ready to fire. So I would assume that that's the way that the ammunition is normally delivered, and that uh, the fact that we're shipping them unassembled 155 millimeter shells is just indicative of the urgency of Israel's need, and our again, I don't know the niceties of law. Maybe by shipping them unassembled, they don't qualify as a weapon, but weapons components, and that might play some role in justifying the bypassing of. I don't know, but I don't think that's the way shells are normally shipped.
You know, I can relate to this, Scott, because I need to get a table, a desk for my apartment. And, you know, Amazon has the best deals, but in almost every case, it comes unassembled. I have to assemble it. That is a burden, you know, so I can relate. Brenda in the UK, how protected are the Palestinian burial grounds from the Israel bombings?
They're not protected at all. Israel's taking bulldozers in and desecrating the burial grounds. There's no protection at all. This is part of the genocide. Genocide isn't just the killing of human beings. Genocide is the eradication of culture, of history, of the people as a whole, and that's what Israel's doing. So no, there's no protection at all. Israel is a despicable nation at this point in time because they're doing things that no civilized nation would tolerate. There's a book written called Alpha, and it's about a Navy SEAL, last name Eddie Gallagher, I think his name, Eddie Gallagher. He was a sniper in Iraq, assisting in the fight against ISIS, and the man was just a brutal thug. He would go up and shoot Iraqi school children, and then call them ISIS kills, but he was turned in by his fellow SEALs. The trial was a travesty. But what I'm saying is that when a Navy SEAL murdered Iraqi children, the system didn't embrace it, applaud it, give him a medal. The Israelis, they're on video right now. They killed a Palestinian mother who was holding the hand of her son. Both were waving white flags as they were trying to move out of a danger zone, and the Israeli sniper shot and killed her. He knew, looking through the scope, that she was a non-combatant. She was waving a white flag. She was holding the hand of a child, and he shot and murdered her. Nothing sacred. The Israelis have become the worst people on the planet.
Here is a question left by voicemail about the Jewish homeland.
Hi, Scott. This is Sean, Kanda Strike Kanda. I have a question about your notions of the Jewish homeland. You're of the opinion that Israel has the right to exist. That's absolutely fair. You're also of the view that the Jews deserve a homeland, and that history has shown that that should be the case. Now, is this not contradictory to your belief against a supremacist ideology, whether it be in a state or otherwise? That is to say, does a Jewish homeland by itself not necessitate a supremacist nation state or country in which Jews are above all else? And forgive me, this
Fair
is
question.
I mean, no disrespect whatsoever. I actually very much respect your work. I just thought I'd pick your mind on this because I didn't understand it. Thank you and continue your good work. Shout out to Jeff.
Thank you for your question. I will answer it this way. I think we had Eva Bartlett on a while back, and Eva corrected me. I kept talking about a two-state solution, as I thought that was the most viable thing. And she said, there can't be a two-state solution. And, you know, I respect her. She's a woman of great experience. And, you know, the more I've studied it, because I admitted, you know, at that time that, you know, I hadn't been a student of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I was late to the game, so to speak. And so there is a lot of evolving thought process going on. And today I'm of mind that there can't be a two-state solution for exactly some of the reasons that you outlined, that it empowers Israel to be an exclusive Jewish-only supreme land. That's not the case. So I agree with you. I think right now that Israel has shown that it has behaved abysmally. I believe now in a one-state solution that can incorporate the notion of Jews living in their historical homeland, but not in a Jewish-only state. And it would have to be peacefully coexisting with other Palestinian citizens, Muslims, Christians, the people of Palestine who have as much of a religious right to live in these lands as the Jews do.
All right, let's take one more question, then let Scott go Betty by. This is from Democracy Brewing in California. I keep hearing that Israel has killed as many women and children in 2 months as Russia has killed in 21 months. Is that true? Has Russia killed 15,000 women and children in Ukraine?
I don't believe Russia has killed 15,000 women and children in Ukraine. So I think that that's a false narrative. Russia, there have been Ukrainians that have died. The United Nations has tracked these numbers, but Russia's been assiduous in their targeting. They don't commit the kind of flagrant violations of international law that Israel commits on a daily basis. If Russia does target a civilian target, I think it's by error as opposed to being a deliberate act. The Washington Post, Human Rights Watch, and others organizations have said straight up that Ukraine uses its own civilians as human shields, that they put military equipment around occupied apartments, they put it around hospitals, they put it around protected areas. And in doing so, they are committing a war crime, because you are trained, it's repetitive motion, so that when the world starts exploding, you do the same thing. You don't hesitate. The same thing with a pilot. You are trained in a specific airframe with specific avionics, with specific performance characteristics, and it's second nature for you. So a Ukrainian pilot who has extensive experience in a MiG fighter or a Sukhoi fighter, these Soviet-era fighters, if you're going to try and transition him to a F-16 fighter, it's a completely different airframe, completely different avionics, completely different system. And your muscle memory of the MiG is going to interfere with your ability to properly absorb it. This isn't me saying this. This is the experience of a South Carolina Air National Guard unit that does this kind of transition training for former Soviet client states who have now become NATO members. Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, nations that had MiG fighters who are acquiring American fighters, F-16s. There's a 6-month training program where you transition MiG pilots into F-16 pilots. And what the Air National Guard says is that if you have an experienced MiG pilot, he's actually a very bad F-16 pilot because of the muscle memory issues. When push comes to shove and he's put under stress, he falls back on that which he knows and is comfortable with, and he makes mistakes. He's slower. The pilots that do best are guys with little or no experience of flying a MiG, so they can be solely focused on flying the F-16. And so this is a problem because, the United States, if we're going to provide the F-16, if the best Ukrainian pilots come over, we're actually going to make them worse. They're better off flying the Polish MiG-29s than they are flying American F-16s. And the other thing is the F-16 is not capable of the kind of operations that the Ukrainians require. the F-16 has to fly from an improved airfield, an airfield that has, good runway systems, good logistical. It's a very maintenance intensive aircraft. The Ukrainians are flying from unimproved airfields. Now the MiG-29 can do that. It's designed to do that. It's a more robust, undercarriage, etc. The F-16 can't. There's very few places in Ukraine that it could fly from. Those places are easily identified and targeted by the Russians. To provide the F-16s to the Ukrainians would cost a lot of money, take a lot of effort, and there's that old saying, the squeeze ain't worth the juice. All the effort we're putting in, you're not going to get enough out of it. So the United States has made the right decision not to provide aircraft, which on paper would look like you're upgrading the performance of the Ukrainian Air Force, but in reality, you're degrading it. They're better off getting aircraft that they are comfortable with, they know they can handle. Ukrainians are never going to get enough aircraft to challenge the Russian Air Force in a one-on-one air supremacy battle. The best they're going to be able to do is have aircraft that can harass the Russians, that can harass their troops, that can carry out limited operations. And right now they're doing that with their existing, although severely diminished, Soviet-era air fleet. The MiG-29s, the Sukhoi 27s, the Sukhoi 25s. These are the airframes that the Ukrainians need. They have pilots that can operate them. They have a system, logistics system that can maintain them. And they are able to do the kind of operations that are realistic. To think you're going to come in with a number of American F-16 airframes and dramatically change the nature of this air battle is naive in the extreme.
Okay. So on the one hand, the United States is smart in that they're thinking through this stuff. On the other hand, unless we're giving them a massive amount of air support, it's just not going to change the trajectory of the war.
Correct.
Okay. Yesterday, General Milley and Lloyd Austin of the Pentagon held a joint briefing. In there, Lloyd Austin said something that was very confusing to me. And well, yes and no. Okay, this is what he said. He said that Ukraine will be victorious because 50 nations are supporting her, and Russia will not be victorious because only 2 nations, North Korea and Iran, are supporting them. Are they really believing that this war is going to end depending on how many people are giving you or selling you weapons? That seems so naive to me.
No, you're 100% correct. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this war isn't just a military struggle on the battlefield. This war has an economic aspect to it and a geopolitical aspect to it, a diplomatic aspect to it. The majority of the world does not support what the United States is doing against Russia right now. The majority of the world is either neutral or leaning towards Russia. And that's important when we talk about the economic aspects. You see, one of the major pillars of the American policy approach towards Russia and this conflict with Ukraine was to sanction Russia, thereby undermining their economy, collapsing their economy, creating political pressure on the Russian president. There are some people who have been honest about this. It's called regime change. We saw Kenneth Rogoff, the Harvard professor, member of the G30 banking group, speak at the World Economic Forum in January, I believe, or maybe even February, where he said straight up, sanctions are designed for regime change. And we have the Canadian foreign minister who's come out and basically said the same thing, that we're seeking regime change in Russia using sanctions. But if you talk to Angus King, the independent senator from the state of Maine, he just held a hearing. And Angus King is a big fan of sanctions. He's been promoting sanctions against Russia from day one. But he just held a hearing where he had to say it didn't work, it backfired. And he wants to know why that happened. Why were we promoting a policy that failed across the board, didn't succeed? Russia's economy is stronger now than it was when this war started. The Chinese economy has been reconfigured in a way to not only assist the Russian economic survival in this time of sanctions, but thrive. India is taking Russian energy and doing well on that. The Russians have not been isolated. I don't mean to be facetious, but when was the last time a Russian bank failed? And we can answer that question, when was the last time an American bank failed? So it's not the Russian economy that's having problems. Their economy was supposed to be contracting 25%. It contracted 2%. in 2022, and 2023 is expected to grow. And people should reflect on that. The Russian economy is going to grow despite the fact the United States and the entire collective West are sanctioning that economy, and it's a war economy. War economies don't grow. War economies go into deficit spending mode. The Russians are running a budget surplus, which tells you they're doing something right. The sanctions have failed. So Lloyd Austin is completely wrong when he starts throwing out numbers, because the numbers are meaningless. Now we come to the military equipment aspect of it. Nothing Lloyd Austin talks about is going to change the equation that Jan Stoltenberg, the Secretary General, brought up in January, where he honestly said Ukraine is going to run out of 155 millimeter artillery ammunition in the summer, and there's nothing that can be done to change that equation. There's no miracle cure. There's no magic wand. There's nothing that can be done. They're going to run out of ammunition. How does 50 nations equate into Ukraine running out of ammunition if it was functioning the way that Lloyd Austin is insinuating it is? The bottom line is, don't talk about the numbers of nations providing, talk about the quality of the assistance. And the fact of the matter is that quality isn't enough. They're running out of ammunition. The United States has provided $115 billion worth of assistance to Ukraine, most of that in terms of financial assistance, but tens of billions of it in terms of military assistance. And yet the Pentagon has just put forward a budget requirement down the road that says in order to replace the tens of billions of dollars of equipment that we provided Ukrainians, the Pentagon needs $300 billion. That's a losing economic equation. I mean, I might be a simple Marine and I'm not an economist, but I don't believe that any equation that has you expending tens of billions of dollars and then requiring $300 billion to make up for that has a trajectory that has you going in the right direction. And the United States isn't unique in this. Germany has pretty much acknowledged they've given away everything to Ukraine. They have nothing left. They have troops coming in. They have no helmets for these troops. They have no body armor for these troops. They have no guns for these troops. They have no ammunition for these troops because everything's been given away to Ukraine, and the Germans cannot afford to acquire the equipment necessary to replace it because prices have gone up. They can't build new tanks because the cost of steel is too high, and yet they're giving away the tanks to Ukraine, but not in enough numbers. It's like the MiG. The tanks that are being provided are insufficient quantity. I think the Spaniards right now are in the process of finalizing, preparing 10 tanks to be transferred to Ukraine, but 6 of those 10 tanks are in a depot being brought back into service, meaning that they were broken, they were run down, they couldn't operate. So we're giving Ukraine broken tanks that are decades old. We can fix them, but they're going to break again, and Ukraine doesn't have the means to repair them. That's why the 50 is a meaningless number. When they're putting that number out there, it has no gravitas. It's not a serious number. The reality is, the actual quality and quantity of the equipment being provided to Ukraine, and it's insufficient to the task. The Russian defense industry, on the other hand, is cranking up. And here's the sort of the misleading thing. There's no evidence that North Korea is providing Russia with military assistance, none whatsoever. It's an allegation that's put out by the United States, basically for political purposes. But if you think about it, logically speaking, this is an artillery-driven war, and we've heard from the Jan Stoltenberg that Ukraine's going to run out of artillery. That's a game changer. That's game ender there. When they run out of artillery, the war literally is over at that point in time. Russia uses a lot of artillery ammunition. Now, I'm somebody who believes in studying this problem that Russia's defense industry has been mobilized, and they are producing an awful lot of artillery rounds. One of the numbers that has been put out there is around 420,000 rounds per month. That's a lot of artillery. They need that. That's the fuel for their war engine. Think about that. Think of the Russian artillery as the war engine. The shells are the fuel. So they need 420,000 rounds to keep this thing going. If that was an insufficient number and Russia's getting ready to launch a major offensive, that means they need more artillery. If they're going to acquire that from North Korea, that means the people who control Russia's fate are the North Koreans, because that's the fuel. Imagine being a race car driver and coming into a pit stop and not being in control of your fuel supply. And so you're pitting thinking, I'm going to get fuel. Now, if your team has the fuel, you can be confident you're going to have the fuel. But if you've delegated this to another team and you pull into a pit stop, but the other team doesn't provide the fuel, you lose the race. Russia will never delegate the fuel to its war engine to a third party, whether it be North Korea, whether it be China. Now, on Iran, it's not that Russia has delegated anything. Russia has bought a specific weapon system from the Iranians, a drone system that helped Russia upgrade its own drone fleet. But while this has provided a qualitative advantage for Russia in certain aspects of the conflict, it's not one that Russia has to have to win. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. So the implication that somehow Iran is underwriting the Russian war effort just shows a level of ignorance about the sophistication of the Russian defense industry and of the Russian military. And I think it was irresponsible for both Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley to make such insinuations, because it creates a false impression.
And maybe that's what they want. They just want the impression of the United States looking generous, but not having to actually fulfill. Kind of like, hey, we're going to give you 31 tanks, but we can't get them, until 2024. Hey, at least they had good intentions and tried, right? So, okay, going back to Mark Milley, he said in that same conference that Russia, their military is making mindless moves with vast numbers of untrained soldiers. There could be some truth to that, but it does seem that Russia has become significantly more organized in the last 90 to 120 days. Is he using old intel, or is there some truth to what he's saying?
No, there's no truth to what he's saying. It's not even that he's using old intel. What's happening right now, and it's happening across the board, is what I call mirror imaging, meaning that Ukraine is right now in a state of imminent collapse. Their military is becoming virtually dysfunctional, and one of the reasons is they're running out of manpower. So Ukraine is going around and literally kidnapping people off the streets, including 14 and 16-year-old boys who are showing up on the front line with 3 days of training. So they're kidnapped from the streets of Odessa, given 3 days of training. They end up in Bakhmut and they die. This is happening in massive numbers. And this is a public relations problem for the Ukrainians. So what we're doing is we're mirror imaging the problems of Ukraine onto the Russians. But the Russians aren't doing that. The Russians mobilized 300,000 men in September. The vast majority of those men are still undergoing training. So the notion that these are poorly trained troops is just absurd in the extreme. These were military reservists who already had served in the military, had a modicum of experience, and instead of being thrown straight into the fight, they're being sent to a training area where for now September, October, November, December, January, February, we're coming up on 7 months of training to get them ready to form on the battlefield. So, Mark Milley is just making this up. It's not what's happening. The Russians are extraordinarily well equipped. They have modern equipment, modern tanks, modern artillery. They have body armor. They have everything they need, and they're trained to do this job. These are not poorly trained troops, and they're not throwing them in human wave assaults. The fact of the matter is that the casualty ratio right now is insane. Normally in a war, the offense versus defense is you want a 3-to-1 advantage from the offense to defense, because generally speaking, you're going to take more casualties than the defender. So you need that kind of advantage. The Russians right now are, operating with parity in numbers when it comes to infantry, but superiority in numbers when artillery. But on the casualty ratio, they're killing Ukrainians sometimes as high as 16-to-1 in a day. Sometimes it drops down to 10. Sometimes it drops down to 8. But what that means is if you on the best day the Ukrainians are having, for every 800 Ukrainians that die, they're killing 100 Russians. But on the worst day, for every 100 Russians that die, 1,600 Ukrainians die. And the Ukrainians are having a lot of bad days, not so many good days, but even their good day is a nightmare. It's Ukraine that's chewing through its troops at a rate that's unimaginable. And I think it was Lloyd Austin that threw out a number, casualty number of 100,000. I think in the same presentation, he talked about 100,000 dead. But he knows that's a lie. He knows that he was reported to by General Zaluzhny of the Ukrainian army last month that Ukraine had suffered close to 250,000 dead on top of which there are 83,000 missing, most of whom are dead, which means that Ukraine has suffered around 320,000 dead. That's the honest number. But Lloyd Austin can't be honest about that because that's a number that just boggles the mind. If you look at the combatant losses of the United States in World War II, in both the Pacific Front and the European Front, we didn't lose 320,000 dead. We lost fewer than that in terms of combatant deaths, people who died in combat. Ukrainians have lost 320,000 combatant deaths in 1 year. That's a ridiculous number. That's a sickening number. And it reflects the reality of what's going on the ground in Ukraine today. And Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley can't be honest about that, because if they were, American people would say, then we need to bring this war to an end, because this is just resulting in the death of people that we claim to be supporting.
Yeah, I spoke recently with Colonel McGregor, and he said that the United States, this is a humanitarian crisis now, and that they owe it to Eastern Europe to switch gears and sue for peace, and withhold weapons and support until they seek peace. But for some reason, they continue to defer to Zelensky to decide, when is there peace? When is this over? What does winning and losing look like? How much money and weapons do you need? Why is the United States continuing to give Zelensky so much authority over this war, when it's obvious that it's the United States and the United Kingdom and Germany and Poland driving the majority of the rhetoric and the equipment into the war?
That's a very good question. To answer that, we have to understand the quality of the advice being given to the President of the United States. You know, right off the bat, when you have senior people admitting that the policy was regime change, that we wanted to put in sanctions and create political pressures to bring down Vladimir Putin, it tells you two things. One, there is a very strong anti-Putin animus existent in the US government. And two, there's a level of ignorance about Russia that is mind-boggling. I'm not going to brag, but back in December, I said, if we implement these sanctions, Russia will emerge stronger, intact, and it will be the Western economies that begin to collapse. I was proven 100% correct. Why? Because I have taken the time to study Russia, understand Russia, and understand the realities of their economy. But to do that, I have to cut through the fiction that's been put up there about, for instance, that Russia is a nation ruled by one man, Vladimir Putin, the all-seeing, all-knowing, all-evil dictator who controls everything, instead of recognizing the reality that Russia is a very large country where control has been delegated to regional authorities who manage their individual regions, who come together using a bureaucracy to create a consolidated, unified policy that's then taken up to Putin, who oversees it, as a manager, as the chief executive, but not as a dictator. If you understand what I say is the reality, then you're able then to take the time to read the position papers that are put out there. The Russians are telling us what they're doing. They don't lie. They are a very transparent society. Their budget is published. The documents that are used to create that budget are published, and people need to take the time to read that. But if you do that, then it takes away your ability to say, well, Vladimir Putin is the personification of evil. Because if you take the time to study Russia and learn Russia, you realize he's just a very effective manager of a very complex and expansive, nation. Joe Biden is surrounded by what I call the Putin whisperers. This is a group of people who came into academic maturity at the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the decade of the 1990s, when the goal of the United States was to keep Russia down, to weaken it economically, control it politically, and if necessary, to break it up into constituent parts that would forever keep it weak and never able to rise up and challenge the United States in the way that the Soviet Union had done during the Cold War. These are people like Michael McFaul, Fiona Hill, Angela Stent, and others who have written their PhD thesis on authoritarian rule and Vladimir Putin. These are people who supported Boris Yeltsin's government and are resentful that Putin emerged from the post-Yeltsin period to try and unify Russia and make Russia strong again, which he has done. Whether you like Putin or you dislike Putin, you have to acknowledge that he has taken Russia out of, the swamp that Boris Yeltsin had created in the post-Gorbachev, post-Perestroika era, and he has taken Russia up to be one of the strongest and most resilient economies. People talk about infrastructure. In the United States, of course, we have concerns about infrastructure. We have rail cars derailing, we have bridges collapsing, etc. People don't like to talk about the fact that Vladimir Putin has just succeeded in expanding the Russian subway around Moscow. And if you go in the subway, will put anything New York City has to shame instantly. The totality of the Russian subway. It's modern, it's clean, it's efficient, it's everything we would want our infrastructure to be, and everything we claim the Russian infrastructure can't be, because if he's a dictator ruling over this dysfunctional country, how could they possibly produce that? But the Russians produce a lot of good things. It's a nation that's on the rise. And I'm not saying that because I want to sing its praises. I'm saying it because that's real. You can't solve a problem unless you first accurately define the problem, because any solution you come up to a problem that's not accurately defined isn't a solution at all. It's nothing. To discuss Russia as a problem, we have to describe it accurately, and it can't be described accurately if you're putting everything on the shoulders of Vladimir Putin and you're trying to describe him as this evil character, which of course all senior Americans doing, whether they're in the Pentagon or they're in the White House or they're in Congress. You will not see a single person say what I just said about the reality of Russia. Instead, Congress holds hearing after hearing where they bring in these Putin whisperers who say over and over again about how bad Russia is, how poorly it performs, how dysfunctional it is, and how dictatorial Vladimir Putin is. That's just not the truth.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of Putin and politicians, yesterday, Senator Lindsey Graham called for the U.S. military to start shooting down Russian warplanes anytime they enter international waters. This is his reaction to the Russian fighter jet taking down the Reaper drone over the Black Sea. What kind of repercussions would there be for the United States if we start shooting down Russian warplanes?
Well, the potential for all-out war. I mean, Russia's not going to let that happen. They would challenge us militarily, and then we would end up in a force-on-force conflict that neither side can afford to back down from. So it turns into total war, and then that has the potential of turning into a nuclear exchange, and then this conversation is moot because we're going to be dead. That's what Lindsey Graham needs to understand, and that's what the people who listen to Lindsey Graham need to understand. He's a very dangerous man right now. I know he's a United States senator. I know he's allowed to speak his mind and, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that people who are listening to him should treat what he's saying as if it is the truth. He is speaking in a very dangerous manner. First of all, he said that he implied that Ronald Reagan would never allow something like this to happen. Well, with all due respect, Lindsey Graham, I was in the military as a Soviet expert during the Reagan administration, and we let it happen all the time because, the idea of flying provocative mission profiles with aircraft or with ships didn't begin today. And people should be under no, misconception here. What we did with the Reaper was a provocation. We took an intelligence collection platform, flew it in an area that the Russians know, that we know is very sensitive to Russia, right off the coast of the Crimea Peninsula, one of the most heavily militarized areas in Russia, during a time of war when the United States has a history of collecting intelligence, giving it to Ukrainians so they can target the Russians. So the fact that we're flying an intelligence collection profile in support of Ukraine along the Russian coast is in itself an act of war. This isn't a peaceful exercise. We are being provocative, deliberately so. Two, the Russians have created an exclusion zone and have announced that to the United States, saying that you cannot fly in this area because we have sensitive military activity taking place. That is required under international law. But what we're saying is that because Crimea is Ukrainian, not Russian, the Russians illegally occupied it, Russia has no ability to put an exclusion zone in on what is Ukrainian territory, so we disregarded it. So we sent a $32 million aircraft into this exclusion zone with a sensitive intelligence collection pod, collecting intelligence that when it's returned will be given to the Ukrainians to plan military operations against the Russians. And we're shocked that the Russians took the plane down. So Lindsey Graham is wrong. Marco Rubio, who also came out and spoke about this, is wrong. This wasn't the United States innocently trying to exercise freedom of navigation. this was the United States carrying out a purposefully provocative military operation that makes the United States an active participant in an ongoing conflict. And so if you see it in that perspective, you realize what we did was horribly irresponsible. And now Lindsey Graham is talking about escalation by bringing in, manned fighter aircraft in a way that's designed to create a force-on-force incident with the United States and Russia. This is bad policy. Fortunately, I don't see the Pentagon or the White House going down this path because there are saner minds out there than Lindsey Graham or Marco Rubio.
Okay, so they're going to be ignored. Okay, that's good. Okay, this has been really great. In our last couple minutes together, on our last meeting, you talked about being a part of a team that put together a treaty that literally saved the world from, I believe, nuclear war. I would like to hear about that.
Sure. I just wrote a book about it, Disarmament at the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control and the End of the Soviet Union. It's about the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, or the INF Treaty. Intermediate nuclear forces are ballistic missiles or cruise missiles with a range between 500 and 5,000 kilometers. These were systems that were deemed to be extremely destabilizing in the European environment. The United States deploying Persian 2 missiles, for instance, into West Germany, gave us the ability to strike Moscow 7 minutes after launch, which means the Russians had no warning time if this was launched. So Russia would push the button and fire everything. In that time, everything included SS-20 road mobile missiles, very difficult to target, each of which had 3 nuclear warheads aimed at European cities. So this was the scenario with these weapons in place. The Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty made the decision to get rid of these weapons. A very bold decision. It was a decision made by Ronald Reagan, who is one of the most conservative presidents we've ever had, a man who